Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Oh man, we got trees. I am Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. You might be wondering, if you missed the show yesterday, why this microphone is so close to my face when it normally isn't, and why I might sound a little bit different because I have a different setting on my microphone. We do have the tree people here. Again, they have showed up. They will be completed today. There is chainsaws going in the background. Hopefully you can't hear me. Everyone yesterday said it was palatable, so we'll hope that it is the same thing yet again today. Let's keep those fingers crossed that it is indeed the case. Things should return to normal in the episodes moving forward. I am Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Thanks for joining me here today. The show Fantasy Sports Daily is powered by FantasyGuru.com. We're on Monday through Friday, 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, and it's free. So tell a friend, spread the word. Don't play hooky from work. Well, you can play hooky from work. Just don't get caught. You can always watch this show live on Twitter, X, at Fantasy Guru site. If you're watching us live on YouTube at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork or on Facebook at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. In both of those spots, you can leave comments that I'll see, and we can address those throughout the show. And that's always nice to get that interaction with you. So on YouTube and Facebook, if you're watching live, you can leave comments and questions. You can always listen to the show later on over at FantasyGuru.com. Click the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. That'll bring up the old shows, including today's show. And then you can always obviously go to your podcast network, Spotify, Pandora, Apple, iTunes, all those spots. Type in Fantasy Sports Daily, and you should be able to find the show as well. What are we talking about today? We got a lot of Monday Night Football to discuss. Break down that game, Steelers-Giants. Steelers won 26-18 over the Giants. We'll talk about that one. A couple of quarterback situations, Richardson and Love, what's going on there with the Colts and the Packers quarterbacks. A bunch of wide receiver talk. Is Diontae Johnson going to get traded? What's going on with Chris Godwin, DK Metcalf, Stefon Diggs, T. Higgins, and Brian Thomas, who we talked about at the end of the show yesterday is going to miss 2 to 4 weeks. Now he might play this week. That's how things go sometimes in the world of fantasy football. We'll also talk to Armando Marsal in about a half an hour. Armando joins us every Tuesday at about 9:30 Pacific time, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. So he'll jump in, talk to waiver wire. That's got a lot of players to discuss on the waiver wire. Who should you be prioritizing this week, especially at the wide receiver spot? Armando and I will talk about that moving forward. Again, let me know if the chainsawing gets too loud. Not that there's much we can do about it here, but I've done what I can. Keep our fingers crossed. I'll be back on Thursday to do the show. That won't be an issue then. Justin Fenton will be hosting tomorrow. Won't be an issue tomorrow either. So here we go. Let's talk about the game on Monday Night Football. Again, I mentioned the Steelers won this game 26-18. Whatever. It's the Steelers and Giants. Giants fall to 2-6. Steelers move to 6-2. Jeff Mans jokingly said in the Discord over at FantasyGuru.com, the love affair with Russell Wilson lasted 1 week. Kind of did. Justin Fields hurt his leg at practice, so he was the third quarterback last night. So I still firmly believe, obviously, that Wilson's going to be the starting quarterback for this team. But he was fine last night. He's Russell Wilson. He's going to be fine. And he's going to, try to play mistake-free football and lead an offense to a victory, and that's basically what he did. The defense, obviously, is the calling card of the Steelers, keeping the game close and all of that. Let's start out by talking about Wilson in a little bit more depth. 20 for 28, 278 yards, a touchdown. The touchdown went to Calvin Austin. Spread the ball around. 5 targets to Pickens, 5 to Jefferson, 4 to Austin, 4 to Najee Harris, 3 to Jalen Warren. And, it's one of those scenarios where it's good for the football team. Again, they're going to rely on keeping a game close and winning with their defense, avoiding turnovers. It's too spread out from a fantasy perspective to get overly excited. We can't start Van Jefferson. We can't start Calvin Austin. We know that. The only guy we can really start is George Pickens. Let's talk about him. Pickens, 4 catches for 74 yards. A very traditional George Pickens effort, right? Now, we know that George Pickens could have had 2 touchdowns yesterday. And that's the rub here with Pickens. In a different game, with different officiating, with someone not seeing this or seeing that, he has 2 touchdowns. And the 474 is kind of what we've grown to expect from Pickens. I think if you started him last night and you got 11.5 PPR points, that's what you were expecting. Were you hoping for more? Sure. Could be 11.5 been 23. It could have. He had a couple of touchdowns that didn't end up in the box score, and that's he had a 11-yard touchdown was called back for offensive face mask, and then had a 9-yard touchdown in the back of the end zone where the review said his second foot was just out. So that's kind of what we got with Mr. Pickens at this point in time. He continues to be boom or bust. The addition of Wilson under center is absolutely a positive for Pickens. There is no way around that. Wilson's a better deep ball thrower than Justin Fields. He's more apt to throw the ball into tight windows and try to get the ball to his big guy. But as we saw last night, even getting the ball to his big guy was 5 targets. Now, again, a couple of those were penalties, and so it could have been 7. But, again, this is what it is with Pickens. He's doing weird things on the field. He's jumping in the air. And we were laughing about that play where the players were coming at him. And he jumps up in the air, lifting his legs. Like, what is he doing? I don't know what he's doing. But George Pickens is a wide receiver 3 who can explode and be a wide receiver 1 in any week. That's just how it is for the number 1 Steelers wideout this season. Pat Freiermuth was a thing for a while there in the fantasy space, and then he settled back in, whether it's Fields or Wilson. He settled into catching 3 passes a week for 30 yards. Last night, it was 2 targets, 2 catches, 19 yards. Russell Wilson hasn't been Mr. Tight End for years. It's just not, where he looks. Was reading the work over at Pro Football Focus this morning. Nathan Janke always breaks down the stuff very well. And he was talking about how Pat Freiermuth is really being rotated in and out. The tight end position with the Steelers is one where Pat Freiermuth is the one we pay attention to in the fantasy space. But if you look at this, Freiermuth played 43 snaps. Darnell Washington played 29 snaps. Connor Hayward played 14 snaps. Like, they're rotating out. And with their propensity to run the ball and use the other 2 guys and a lot of 12 personnel, Freiermuth is just, so this is what it is. And for those people that picked up Freiermuth earlier on because their tight end was struggling, because they were getting those 7-8 points a week from Freiermuth. And I remember telling people you can add Freiermuth because he's going to give you 7 or 8 points, but it's 7 or 8 points. Now we're not even in the 7 or 8 points. Now we're in the 5 or 6 point zone with Pat Freiermuth. It's touchdown or bust. His role in this offense does not figure to change. Disappointing is what it is. So if you have Pat Freiermuth as your only tight end, you would be advised. It'd be advisable to consider adding another tight end. I know. That's what the tight end position is. Tight end position, amen, is week of the tight end, right? National Tight End Week, the most made up holiday in the history of holidays. Might need to make a move because Pat Freiermuth he's not getting the work. He's getting rotated off the field in running situations, and Russell Wilson doesn't love throwing to the tight end. On the other side of things, Daniel Jones doesn't love throwing to anybody. He got 2 touchdown passes in 5 games. Daniel Jones has run for 40 yards, I think, 1 time this year. There are all kinds of rumblings, and there were some pretty strong rumblings that, behind the scenes, a lot of the Giants quarter players are supporting Daniel Jones, but only because Drew Lock is the number 2. Like, there was a quote from an anonymous player, for what it's worth, I think it was an ESPN story, saying, well, if Tyrod Taylor was here, things would be different. I guess no one believes in Drew Lock. So I don't know that there's a change coming. I know a lot of people are blaming Daniel Jones. Let's remember, Daniel Jones has been a very efficient quarterback at times in his NFL career. The Giants paid him a lot of money to be the lead dog for this offense. The fact is the offense is very uneven. Part of that is Jones, but part of that is the offensive line just struggling in pass protection. He doesn't exactly have a banging group of receivers. Maybe it's some play calling here and there too. Like, it's just a very basic staid offense. So Daniel Jones, we all know what he is. He's a bottom level super flex option for those of you that are kind of in that desperate mode, but it doesn't sound like he's going to lose his job at this point. And even if it went to Drew Lock, it's not likely this offense is going to change dramatically. So at least he threw the ball 13 times to Malik Nabers last night, right? We'll get to that in a second. But the bigger storyline, I think, here with the Giants, obviously, is the backfield scenario. Yesterday, Devin Singletary. So in 2 games since Singletary's return from injury, the first 4 games, Singletary averaged 14 carries a week and had at least 10 carries every week. In 2 games since he's returned, he doesn't have 14 carries. Like, and I had a discussion with somebody in Discord yesterday about this because they were asking, should I pick Tracy up? I have an open roster spot. I'm like, yeah, pick him up because you never know what might happen, right? Well, Tracy goes out and goes for 20 touches on the ground, 145 yards and a touchdown. And again, looked great. He looked great. He was productive. He looked spry. And this is, a continuation of the last 4 games. He's averaging over about 85, 87 yards, something like that, rushing. He's been very productive, producing numbers that Devin Singletary hasn't. And for some reason, Singletary, who they loved, the coaching staff loved and worked with previously, brought in to be their lead running back. The last couple of weeks, they haven't used him. Maybe he's not fully healthy, maybe, but he's active. So that's, So here comes Tracy, let's yippee-ki-yay time, right? 145 yards and a touchdown. At the end of the game, he gets hurt. And we got the news that he's now in a concussion protocol. They got 6 days to get ready for the next game. It's not clear that Tracy's going to be active. So all those people, and this is the real thing. I have Tracy on multiple teams. I think I've used him once in this stretch of games because you didn't use him the first time. You probably didn't use him last night unless you were desperate because, again, it was very reasonable to think it was going to be a 50-50 kind of situation in the backfield. So Tracy's going to end up being one of those guys that's going to maybe have a lot of productivity in the fantasy space, but how many times is he actually active in your lineup? Right? So, I don't know. That's how that goes over there with the backfield situation. I see a comment saying, Sean, we're on. Sean, we're on. We're rocking and rolling. We're live. It's going. Good morning, everybody. Sean, Patio Joe saying, let's go Dodgers. Dodgers 1 game away from winning the World Series. 5 World Series games in a row. Home run for Freddie Freeman. Hello there, Greg. Talking more about the situation with the backfield, Tracy in the head injury, we'll see. So don't drop Devin Singletary, of course. Don't run out if Tracy's on the waiver wire and expend big dollar amounts because we just don't know if Tracy's going to even play at this point. So right now, we got a scenario where Tracy has looked good. He's productive. He just ripped up the Steelers last night, which is not an easy task. But we don't even know if he's going to play the next game for the Giants. Malik Nabers did get those 13 targets that I referenced earlier, 7 catches for 71 yards. Before his injury, he was averaging 13 targets a game. Since he's returned in 2 games, he's averaged 10.5, a little bit less, still a huge number. 7 catches for 71 yards yesterday for Nabers, a very solid effort. And in the context of this offense, pretty damn good. Little bit light given what the expectations are after his hot start to the season, but it was the Steelers, and all these kind of things could be said. Are you going to complain about 7 for 71? Well, you might. And if you are, you're not being honest and fair. Because if he catches 7 passes every week, he gets 100 balls this year for 1,200 yards. It's a pretty good season for a rookie. But yeah, it's a little light from what we saw at the start. If he scores a touchdown, no one cares because then it's great. But even so, 13 targets, I think, is the big number last night. Back up to the volume that we did see with him after that slightly down effort in his first game back from his head injury. Now, Darius Slayton's been really interesting because Slayton last night had 7 targets, 4 catches, 108 yards. Slayton's in the mix, and there have been rumors that Slayton could get traded. Let's not forget the Giants are 2-6. They're not going anywhere. They're not making the playoffs. Maybe they do trade Slayton. I don't know what they get. Get a 5th-round pick for him or something. We'll see. He's been productive the last couple of weeks, especially with Nabers down. He was the number 1 wide receiver. 7 targets and 4 receptions. That's pretty good for the secondary option when your first guy is getting 13 targets in Malik Nabers. Now, remember that Jones threw 38 passes last night, which is elevated. They'd rather have that number around 30. So, it's going to be difficult most weeks for Slayton to get 7 or 8 targets if Nabers is indeed fully healthy. Slayton is the proverbial dart throw each week. That, hey, man, what am I going to do? He can get a 40-yard catch in any game. Did last night. I'm going to start Darius Slayton, right? That's kind of where he's at. Good production last night, but we got to know what he is. Moving on with the team with the blue and the red, and blue and red, white, I guess, the Giants. Finally, Wan'Dale Robinson, 5 catches for 30 yards, and the PPR fraud continues. Wan'Dale Robinson, he's got 5 passes in 5 of 6 games. He's averaging like 41 yards a week. Like it's. Everything is at the line of scrimmage. He's got 2 touchdowns. I think it's 1 in 6 games. Wan'Dale Robinson is Mr. 8.5 points a week. And if that floats your boat, cool. I don't know why many people would. I get questions every week about Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't know why, even if you're in a 3 wide receiver league where, it's a 12-team league, we're starting 3 wide receivers. Is he ever a top 35 wide receiver? I mean, he's giving you 9 points every week. There's a floor there. Okay. There's no ceiling whatsoever. So anyway, there's an issue there. You're experiencing a static type of sound. All right. Well, let's try this, guys. I'll try this. Maybe it's been my microphone. I don't know. Again, we've made some changes here technically. A couple people are saying things in the chat room, so we don't normally see that. So I'll kind of go back to what the norm is. Hopefully the chainsaw doesn't get going again. Hopefully this will sound better. Angelo says it sounds good on his end. I don't know what's going on, you folks. Jeez, I don't know. Maybe it's you, maybe it's me. Who knows? I had a tech call. There's always tech stuff, right? And I say this all the time. Isn't it great when it works? And it's amazing when you think about this. I'm recording this in my office at my house. It's going out to the world. Anywhere in the world, someone can watch this. Well, I guess in the places where they allow free internet, but anywhere with free internet, it's really amazing. When I do the shows on SiriusXM, I'm here. Jeff Mann's in Arizona. My producers live in DC. The show's coming out of New York. Like, it's really amazing that these things all work. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But that's the game on Monday Night Football. Let's talk a little bit about some bigger picture before we visit with Armando Marsal in about 15 minutes, talk some waiver wire with him. Anthony Richardson. Doug says it was his speaker. Everyone's saying there's this is the first time I've heard everyone say there's problems with the broadcast. Multiple people saying it, and both people saying no, it's me. When the second time in 250, 60 shows, I've changed what I did. Okay, I guess hopefully we're good now for everybody. Anthony Richardson, we talked about this yesterday. The fact he's just playing like ass. The fact that he pulled himself out of the game, and that leaving the game because he was tired thing. That's becoming a bigger story. There was a lot of people that are, I guess, in the locker room that are pissed. And nationally, it's become a huge story too. Quarterbacks don't come out of the game. Linemen don't come out of the game. Wide receivers, tight ends, sure. Quarterbacks, hand the ball off, dude. So there's a lot of people that are now questioning not just Richardson's performance, but maybe his desire. I don't know. Shane Steichen said that we're evaluating everything when asked if Richardson's going to be the starter still. Richardson may not be the starter next game for the Colts, which would be, in my opinion, a surprise. Because again, you've got to find out what is going on here with Richardson. You got to keep. You're going to pull him out for Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is going to make the offense look better. You're going to have an opportunity to win football games and potentially make the playoffs with Joe Flacco. But Joe Flacco, he's not the answer, right? We know that. I don't know if Richardson is. And maybe they decide to pull Richardson out and work with him on the sidelines and all that. I don't know. But that would be a very weird. This is why when organizations draft these quarterbacks in the first round of drafts and they immediately say you're a quarterback, this is why there's a problem. In the old days, you get drafted and you matriculate through. You work on the film. You work on learning the offense. You work on working the defense. And then you get a couple starts at the end of your rookie season. And then in year two, there's the debate. Do we bring in, Steve DeBerg, or do we let this guy be our quarterback? It's totally different now. These guys get thrown out there immediately. They're going for it immediately, and they struggle. And Richardson is struggling. And it's not a surprise. Richardson is a ball of talent, but not a refined NFL quarterback. He just wasn't. The belief amongst some people was that his athleticism was just so immense and intense that he'd be able to overcome his shortcomings. He hasn't. Just hasn't. And now we don't even know if he's going to be the quarterback the next game for the Colts. I'll have to continue to watch that one closely. Next up, Jordan Love, who hurt his groin, and we talked about this yesterday in detail. There is a belief that the injury is minor, so minor, in fact, that despite looking like he got shot yesterday or Sunday, he might actually be able to play this weekend, which is obviously great news for the Packers. Malik Willis is a very competent NFL quarterback at this point of his career. We talked about that yesterday as well. If you missed it, check out the show on demand. But obviously the offense is completely different with Malik Willis and Jordan Love under center. With Malik Willis, we're trying not to turn the ball over. With Jordan Love, we're trying to score 30 points. So let's hope that Love is out there for the sake of his teammates. Let's talk about some wide receivers. We look at the wide receiver position, and we have to understand the landscape is changing on a weekly basis. There's injuries all over the place. There's problems all over the place. There's young players that are asserting themselves. It's halfway through the year. This is what happens a lot in the NFL. And right now, we've got a scenario where the trade deadline's about a week away or whatever it is. And the Panthers are not good. And I talked about yesterday Jalen Coker, who we'll talk about in a few minutes with Armando Marsal. And I kind of said, look, 4 for 78. He had a good game, everything like that. I didn't really count, and I hate doing this because it's an unknown. But I didn't really factor in the what if Diontae Johnson is traded? What if Diontae Johnson and Adam Thielen are traded? Like, what if they make the decision in Carolina, we're just going to blow this thing up, get some picks back, and try to do more, surrounding Bryce Young? There's a report from The Athletic that said the Panthers should be able to get a 5th-round pick for Diontae Johnson, which, again, it's a 5th-round pick. Is Diontae Johnson long-term for this team? His contract is up at the end of the year. Would he re-sign with the Panthers? Like, we don't know the inner workings of this organization. But Johnson could get traded, and he's beat up physically right now. But Diontae Johnson goes to another team, and, it's 5 catches for 65 yards a week, and he's back to starting for us. Maybe a guy like Legette or Coker, maybe they can become weekly plays in the second half of the NFL season. Maybe I was too dismissive of that idea yesterday. So we'll talk more about that with Armando Marsal. But there's a lot of teams. I mean, think the Bucks are down 2 wide receivers. The Niners are down Ayuk. The Commanders don't really have a second wide receiver. The Chargers have Ladd McConkey and Josh Palmer. Like, they don't really have a receiving core. The Texans, we're still waiting on Stefon Diggs, we'll talk about in a second. Collins is out with the injury with his hamstring. And there's a lot of teams that could use some help with the wide receiver spot. Chris Godwin says that there is a scenario, and that would be a best case scenario. But there's a scenario where if the postseason run occurs for the Buccaneers, that he might be able to return from his ankle injury. This doesn't do anything in the fantasy space. This is not actionable information. It's just me sharing with you the idea that Chris Godwin said, look, I know my ankle was jacked up. If everything goes right with my recovery, if we make the playoffs, maybe I can return in the postseason. Just something to keep in mind with Chris Godwin. Back to the guys that can help us right now. DK Metcalf, who missed the game last week with the MCL issue in his knee, says, according to head coach Mike McDonald, quote unquote, is looking optimistic that he could play this week. So that's good news. He missed the game last week. Obviously, the receiving corps didn't really step up. We talked about JSN and Lockett yesterday. Bobo. They desperately need Metcalf, desperately to make this offense go. Not just because of his production, but because of the element that he brings to the offense that they just don't have. A bunch of ham and eggers without DK Metcalf there to threaten defenses and all of that. So DK Metcalf got a chance to play this weekend. If he does, he's obviously in your fantasy lineup. Stefon Diggs, this is interesting. Diggs hurt his knee, non-contact, lots of whispers of ACL injuries when a guy isn't hit and he's just standing there and making a move and the knee buckles. That's what we have learned as laymen to expect. Could still exactly be the case. Diggs could be done for the season. We just don't know. Now, the issue is we don't know. And normally, and I've told this story before, Dr. David Chow was an NFL doctor for about 20 years, used to come on Sunday nights on Sirius XM with Kyle Elfrink. He used to come on with us every week. And he told us that, when a doctor goes on the field or he's on the sideline and he's doing the manual examination of a player's knee, he said with like 95% certainty, whatever the doctors do, they can determine right there on the sideline whether the ACL is torn or not. So the idea that, doctors looked at this and they're running imaging yesterday and we still don't know if he's got a torn ACL and the season over is not, it's kind of strange. It leads me to think that maybe it's not a torn ACL because we probably would have had that information by now. Possible that there's swelling and they couldn't tell. Like, that could be the case. But again, this wasn't a twist up, bang up. This was just he made a cut. So we'll see. I'll check a little again right here, right now to see if anything has popped. No, haven't seen anything pop. Okay, so we're still waiting on Stefon Diggs, which again is odd. Hopefully we'll hear today. I assume we'll hear today. Nico Collins is out at least one more week for the Texans regardless. Diggs, is he going to play this week? Even if he didn't tear his ACL, is he going to play this week? I think that's highly unlikely. So we'll talk also to Armando Marsal about the receiving group with the Texans because CJ Stroud's got to throw the ball to somebody. T. Higgins, I'm trying to play. I can't play. I want to get paid, but I don't play. I love football, but I don't play. The guy that never plays football. T. Higgins is being called day-to-day with his quad injury. So there's a chance he plays. We saw what happened last week when he went down. Jamar Chase still got his in terms of targets and catches, but he was utilized all underneath. Everything was out of the slot. There wasn't the game-breaking plays that we've seen from him. Andre Yashavash, who a lot of people pivoted to as a potential option in those deeper 3 wide receiver leagues, did absolutely nothing, which is a huge disappointment. The offense itself for the Brewers. Wow. The Bengals really didn't do anything. They started out hot and then they just petered out the rest of the way. So Higgins is a vitally important piece in the fantasy space, and obviously to the offense of the Bengals. And his loss, Yosavash again, just he's no T. Higgins. T. Higgins, for all of my slander, T. Higgins is a really talented football player, and there have been moments where he has been a star. There will be moments in the future where he's a star. He could go to another team next year as their wide receiver one and catch 98 passes for 1,400 yards. Like, he could do that. Would he stay healthy long enough for it even to be a chance? I have no idea. But right now he's being called day-to-day. So the hope is that he'll be able to play the next game for the Bengals. We'll continue to obviously monitor that situation very closely because, again, it changes a lot of the dynamic of the offense. By the way, when there was a question or multiple questions about Zach Moss, since we're talking Bengals, I would try very hard to not drop Zach Moss. Zach Moss is still the third down back of the Bengals. He still catches 3 or 4 passes every week. He's still getting 10 touches every week. I know that Chris Brown is the leader now of the backfield. Chris Brown is the more exciting player at this point in time for the Bengals in the backfield. He's the guy that gets the carries at the goal line. I get all that kind of stuff. But if Chris Brown goes down, Zach Moss is getting 18 touches a week. Like, Trayvon Williams is there. I get it and everything like that. But I really believe that if Chris Brown gets hurt, Zach Moss is 15-plus touches. So, he's not usable. There's a difference, right? He's not a usable fantasy asset. But do you drop him? Hopefully you're not dropping him. That, I think, would be an unwise decision if you were to make it. Let me make a note here about something else I was thinking about. There we go. Okay. Finally, the Brian Thomas situation. Again, this is, and Jeff Mann said it very well on his show yesterday. The SiriusXM show is Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern time. It's Elite Sports is the name of the show. You can find it on the SiriusXM app. Just type it in. All the shows are cataloged there. Elite Sports, 3 to 6, Monday through Friday. I'm on the show every Wednesday with Jeff from 3 to 6 Eastern. I'm on this show Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Justin Fensterman is on Wednesdays. On that show, Jeff said it very well yesterday when he said, look, let's just get it right. And, it's one of those things where we already don't know what's going on with the health of players. The reporting has never been worse in terms of the information we get. We don't need to have dueling reports. We had a report yesterday that we talked about here on the show. Jeremy Fowler, who's a reporter I would trust, right? He came out and said that, and it was worded, I forget what the wording was. It wasn't that he's going to miss 2 to 4 weeks, but it was that the likelihood is he's missing 2 to 4 weeks. So it wasn't a definitive, but it was, right? Then we get Doug Peterson coming out later in the day and saying that, oh, by the way, Brian Thomas is day-to-day and that he could play this week. Now, that doesn't mean Brian Thomas is playing this week, and we'll talk more about the Jaguars receiving core with Armando. Doesn't mean that he's going to play this week. So let's not take it to that level, right? Let's not hear the report and go over the top with it. But the fact is that we do have a report from the head coach that says that Brian Thomas could play, could still miss the week, could still miss 2 weeks, who knows? But when you're called day-to-day and your head coach says you have a chance to play, there's a chance to play. So that would be huge because obviously Christian Kirk is done for the year with the broken collarbone. We don't really know what's going on with Gabe Davis. If Brian Thomas were indeed to miss time, because Brian Thomas as well, let's think about this logically. If Brian Thomas moving forward has games where he doesn't have 8 targets, what are you doing? Like, he should be getting 10 targets a week in this offense at this point, right? We talked yesterday about the fact that Evan Ingram takes another step up because he likely soaks up a lot of the Christian Kirk work. But Brian Thomas is in line for a bounty of targets if he can get through the rib injury he's currently dealing with. And again, the reports are suggestive that while 24 hours ago when we were talking about it here on this show, we were concerned, now he's got a chance to play. And that's why we continue to cover everything over at fantasyguru.com. Remember, go to the site, click the subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. Get signed up. You can get the seasonal product. You can get the DFS product. You can get the wagering product. You can get all 3 of them together. If you want to get nuts, which I hope you do, you can get the platinum package over at fantasyguru.com. The VIP platinum package gets you everything that we do, every sport, whether it's golf, NASCAR, MMA, soccer, baseball, football, all the sports over at fantasyguru.com. So send a note to support at fantasyguru.com. Support at fantasyguru.com to get you signed up, and hopefully what you've seen here on this show will lead you to signing up over there. Great group of people. You see them all throughout the week. Our football crew comes on here. We're going to talk to Armando here in a second. Football crew's on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday each week. So they know what they're talking about. So hopefully you'll join us on this show every day, Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern, and over at fantasyguru.com on a full-time basis by subscribing. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. All right. It's 12:30 East Coast time. It's 9:30 West Coast time. It's Armando Marsal time because it's a Tuesday. Let's bring in Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. Hey, Armando, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good, Ray. I'm doing good. It's Halloween week. I don't know if you celebrate Halloween, but I got kids, so I got to take them out trick-or-treating. And you know what that means, right? We actually have a promo code. I don't know if you found out, but we have a promo code going on right now.
Share it.
I just found out right now.
Okay.
Boo. Get you $100 off the all-in a package or the DFS package there. So one or the other, $100 off those packages. And I heard it's only until Monday, so make sure you take advantage of that now. So a little trick-or-treating there. And that's not a trick. That's a treat.
Yeah, boo, B-O-O. Huh? I didn't know that. We just announced it while the show was on.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes ago.
Okay, all right. Boo. So there it is. Boo, B-O-O. Try it out over at fantasyguru.com. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. I am a Halloween guy, Armando. Yes, I don't have kids to trick or treat with, of course, but I'm a Halloween guy, and I kind of feel bad because the old house that I used to live at that we rent out now, I used to decorate the crap out of that thing. And I can only imagine that when the tenants moved in, like people were showing up the year after we moved out and thinking, what the hell happened? Like, because I used to have lights and fog and music and guys that I built and I had a small yard, so it was easy to fill it up. I had one of my old producers at SiriusXM create audio. I did some readings and they mixed my voice and turned me into a ghost and a monster. So it's like, welcome to the home's address, and the haunted house and everything. So yeah. I haven't done that at the new house, so we only got a couple of things out here, but I miss those days, Armando. Do you decorate your home abode as well, or you just take the kids out?
No, I usually decorate. Unfortunately, this year, so we had the hurricane thing going on, the tropical storm, and then the next couple of weekends, I usually try to, wait for the weekends to do that with the kids. It was raining, so we actually did not get the chance to do it. I have everything by the door, ready to take outside, but we never got the chance to do it, so I got to put everything away. But no, we usually do. We got a couple of inflatables. We got some lights, some orange and purple lights there for the trees. And we also have a projector, off the wall, little Halloween stuff. So, but yeah, we do like to decorate here in the Marsal household.
I like it, Armando. Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. Another thing we share in common, our love of the Halloween season. Let's talk some football. We got you here. Let's use your mind. There was a lot of players to talk about on the waiver wire, and I wanted to ask you about one of them first because he's a player that's potentially going to the Hall of Fame, probably going to the Hall of Fame, and he's somebody that hadn't done jack nothing for weeks, but he got his two weapons back. That's Matthew Stafford. He's on waiver wires all over the place. He's got Cut back now. He's got Nakua back now. He threw for 4 touchdowns last week. How are we profiling him in the second half of the season?
Yeah, so I think you have to prioritize him here, right? Like if you're a quarterback needy team, if you've been rolling out Anthony Richardson, if you're dealing with injuries, if you have someone like Jordan Love who's, dinged up now, I think you have to go out there and add Stafford. I view Stafford as a QB1 even in a 12 quarterback league when this offense is fully operating, right? So like we saw it firsthand this weekend, or this week, it was Thursday night against the Vikings. You mentioned it, 4 touchdowns, a very tough defense there. For me, I'm adding him wherever he's available, even in single quarterback leagues. In 2 quarterback leagues, he should not be out there. But in single quarterback leagues, I definitely think you should go out there together. But like you mentioned, I think that there's a steady floor with plenty of upside here moving forward, so long as everyone is healthy.
A couple of running backs. I want to spend the majority of time talking the wide receiver with you this week, Armando. A couple of running backs. Let's start out first with Braelon out on the Jets. Not really been part of the offense for a while now, and that's was kind of expected when they changed things over on the offensive side of things, started featuring Hall all over the place. And then last week, here comes Allen again. And, it's not about the touchdown. It's more about the workload. And he still didn't play anywhere near the snap rate of Breece Hall, but he had 12 carries, I think. Is Braelon Allen is someone that people should add if they don't have Breece Hall? Is there any standalone value there?
I don't think there's consistent standalone value, right? But I do think you're getting a slam dunk if Hall were to miss any time. I do think you're getting a potential RB, a high-end RB2, a low-end RB1 production and probably opportunities there. So I definitely would add him. I don't think he should be on any waivers, whether you have Hall or not. If you have Hall, there's no reason why he should be on waivers at this point.
What about Tajae Spears? Like at one point in the preseason, there was the debate: is it Pollard or Spears? Their ADP was like 5 spots apart, right? And as this season has gone on, Pollard's touching it 20 times a week. Spears isn't been involved when he's been out there. He's been dealing with injury. He's been cast to waiver wires across the land. Pollard, he's never carried the ball 20 times a week. And I know this offense isn't very good, but to me, Spears seems like one of those guys that could be a really good stash at the end of your bench. I don't hear anyone ever talking about him, Armando.
Yeah, because he's been dinged up, right? So you want to be proactive here. I think this is the way you do it. Instead of being reactive when he does play, when he does produce, be proactive here and add him. I agree with you. I think he's someone that's going to have a little role here, even though it's not a great offense. It's a team that they're going to check it down to the running backs, right? When you look at their quarterbacks here, when Will Levis returns, he's going to check it down to the running back. So I think Spears and Pollard are both going to be very involved in the passing game. We've already seen Pollard involved as a pass catcher, and when Spears is healthy, I do think he's going to get that third down work. Like you mentioned, like Pollard is not a 20-touch player. Like he's just not. I don't think he's built for that. So I would be proactive right now when it comes to Tajae Spears. By
the way, on the screen there, I've got the discount code. Did I get it right, Armando? It's BOO for the discount on the VIP Platinum package.
Yes, it is. There you go. Okay. It's the all-in package, or DFS or betting. So make sure you check that out. The DFS betting and or all-in package there.
All right. BOO. Just type the promo code BOO when you go to fantasyguru.com. See if it works. BOO. Armando Marsal at fantasyguru.com. Let's go to the wide receiver spot. And I love reading all the reports this morning on the waiver wire, and everyone's saying add Cedric Tillman. We said that a week ago. So hopefully you got Cedric Tillman, because if you didn't and he scored 2 touchdowns and 99 yards, you're going to have to pay through the nose this week. So let's not talk about him, because I know everyone watching this show and with us at fantasyguru.com added him last week. We're ahead of the game, as Armando was talking about. We're not reactive like everyone else seems to be. What about Elijah Moore? He is not somebody that we talked about last week. We did talk about Jerry Jeudy. Elijah Moore had a big game. Now, Jameis Winston had a big game, but there could be as many bad games as big games. There was at least 2, if not 3 passes that should have been intercepted that he threw last week. Okay. But Elijah Moore produced. He was involved and had a huge target share. What about Elijah Moore?
Yeah, so I think he's someone you can add. We have to keep in mind Winston threw it 41 times. Okay, so Winston did throw it 41 times, and we had Njoku, Jeudy, Moore, and Tillman, all with at least 6 targets there. So they spread the ball around. I think Moore is someone you want to add, but I wouldn't be expecting 12 targets each and every week here for him, Ray. I think he's someone that in PPR makes sense. In the standard league, I don't know if he really makes a lot of sense. I think that also you have to consider that what kind of format you're in. If you're thinking about someone like Moore, I think he's someone that can get you anywhere between 6 and 12 fantasy points per game now moving forward on this offense. And there's going to be peak weeks where he maybe gives you 15 or 16 or whatnot. But I still think it's Tillman. You mentioned it. We talked about it last week, and Jeff Mance talked about it the week before that. So, we've been on Tillman already. Hopefully he's not out there in any of your leagues. So for me, as far as Elijah Moore, yes, but I wouldn't go overboard and I wouldn't chase those 12 targets. I don't think that that's going to be a consistent, role each and every week.
Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com joining me here on the show. We know if we talk Jaguars football that Devin Duvernay's on the IR, that Christian Kirk is lost for the season with the collarbone issue. We just shared the report on Brian Thomas, may or may not play this week. We don't know if Gabe Davis is going to play or not play this week. Parker Washington is kind of the next guy in the pecking order. Tim Jones is there too, but Parker Washington is the next guy up. Looks like he's going to have a role. The question is, what is that role in this offense? What are we doing with Parker Washington? Because he's a name that's slowly going to gain some heat as the week goes on here when people start to realize that the receiving core is so beat up with the Jags.
Yeah, I think he's somebody you want to go and add another PPR. I think he's going to work a lot out of the slot here for Jacksonville, which is that Christian Kirk role. And you mentioned Thomas. I think this is one of those situations where you're going to have to kind of wait and see the injury reports and the practice reports as far as his availability. But I do think Washington, we've kind of seen it like when they've been shorthanded in the past, he's someone that has kind of stepped up and seen more opportunities. I do expect more opportunities for him on a week-to-week basis. here. I think Evan Ingram is going to be a huge, beneficiary here in this aspect. I could see, we could see 10, 15, 15 targets for someone like Ingram, with the shorthanded Jacksonville. So, but yes, Washington, I would go out and get. I wouldn't spend more than what I would say 8% of your fab budget. I think that's fair. If you want to go really aggressive, 10. I think that's a bit too much for him. But I think anywhere between 4 and 8%, really depending on how aggressive your league is and who's out there, right? Because that's another thing. Like, really depends. Like, we're talking about deeper leagues, you might have to be more aggressive. In leagues where you still have Tillman out there, which there's some, Elijan Moore, a lot of people are going to chase that. You might not have to be as aggressive on someone like Washington. You still got guys like Juwan Jennings. I know he's dinged up and they're on bye this week. He's still out there. Pearsall, someone that's still out there in a lot of leagues. Coleman is still out there in a lot of leagues. So really depends on your league and who's out there. But I definitely think you should consider Washington. I do think he gives you a pretty steady floor in PPR formats, given the current situation there in Jacksonville.
Switching things over to the Houston Texans, Nico Collins is out at least one more week with the hamstring injury. We're not positive he's back following that, but he should be back in relatively short order. We don't know what Stefon Diggs got any injury. I think it's probably folly to expect him to play this week, but we're all kind of waiting for the hammer to drop on the torn ACL, but we just haven't heard it yet. The next guy up seems to be Xavier Hutchinson. They still have Robert Woods floating around. John Michie's there, obviously Tank Dell. But is Hutchinson the guy you'd be targeting? And if he or someone else is, like, what are we doing here? Because Collins comes back, he gets 10 targets, and that could be very soon. But if Diggs is out, that's a huge group of targets that are now available in that offense.
Yeah, so I think that once Collins returns, I think it's going to be obviously Collins, the primary receiver there, and then Tank Dell working as that number 2. And then you're looking at kind of third in the pecking order at the receiver position. If you're looking for a 1 week rental, I would probably say Mechie. I would say Mechie, kind of stepped into that Diggs role this past weekend, and I think he can see more opportunities. I also think Hutchinson, like you mentioned, will also receive some more opportunities, but I'm viewing this as a 1 week rental situation, right? Not a long-term, solution to a problem. If you're dealing with a long-term solution, you have to look elsewhere. But again, this is a 0 to 2% situation in deeper formats where you're really, really hurting at the position. When you look at who's on bye this week, you have the Steelers and the 49ers. You're already without Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel's dinged up already. Pickens is that one guy that maybe you have to replace this week, but there shouldn't be too much to replace outside of a lot of injuries here. So this is only a deeper league situation for me that I'd be investing in.
Marsal, FantasyGuru.com. If we go over to the situation with the Cardinals, we know it's Marvin Harrison. We know it's Trey McBride. The third guy in the pecking order there, the number 2 wide receiver, is Michael Wilson. And, Wilson, if you look at his production, Armando, since week 3, 14, these are PPR points. 14, 7, 13, 10, 3, 14. Like, he's consistently been giving you double-digit production. Nothing sexy, nothing exciting. He's not a ceiling play. I don't even know if he's a floor play if he's going for 3 points and he's the third option in his offense. But he's out there in a lot of leagues. How does he factor in with some of these other names we're talking about? Is he somebody that you'd be interested in this week?
What I like about Wilson is that you can get him probably cheaper than most of these guys that we're talking about here, and not that many people have been on him this season. I don't think it's a safe floor. I agree. I think it's kind of like a boom or bust, but it's not a big boom, but it's not a terrible bust. Like, you could still get 3 to 4 points, right? I don't think you're going to get zeros from him many weeks. So I look at him as a plug and play, as flex plug and play, emergency situations where you're just trying to get points. You mentioned that he's on the field a lot. He's been on the field a lot here. But his target share fluctuates from week to week. It's basically it's 18, 12, 7, 20. Like, it's just all over the place. It's not a consistent role. So for me, he's someone that you can add for cheap, good waiver wire. I mean, a good bench kind of player to have there when you don't want to look for zeros. And again, an emergency plug and play, not someone I want to count on each and every week here, though.
If we go over to the Carolina Panthers, we talked about the game yesterday. We broke down the situation with Diontae Johnson and the fact he could end up being traded. There's a lot of rumors to that effect. Adam Thielen's coming back from an injury. There's whispers he could be traded to. Like, the Panthers might just blow this thing up and try to get draft picks. That leaves names like Xavier, Legette, David Moore, and Jalen Coker. I think David Moore, it's David Moore. I'd be more interested in Legette and Coker. But talk us through those two guys, because right now, if Johnson and Thielen are there, there's no meat on the bone. But if one or two of them is out of the lineup, traded, injured, that kind of thing, guys like Legette and Coker all of a sudden get pretty interesting.
Yeah, they become pretty interested, but again, it's like you said, we have to kind of wait and see here, right? And I'm all about being proactive in these kind of situations, but I don't want to be overly proactive and like overly aggressive on the Carolina Panthers offense. Like that's where I'm at, especially with Bryce Young. I know he threw a couple of touchdowns last week, one to Coker, one to Legette. But again, it's not a situation I'm excited to be invested in at this point. I just kind of want to take the wait and see approach. I don't think anyone's going to go and chase those touchdowns this weekend. And if they do, they're probably going to overpay. So for me, it's just I'm sitting back. I'm letting others, kind of invest there. And I'm going to look at some of the other guys we've talked about here and not really overspend on anyone for Carolina this week.
At the tight end position where everyone's hunting, right? We know how that goes. It's National Tight End Day, had the greatest tight end day. Oh, I'm so tired of that storyline. But there are people that, are still looking for the tight end. You look at Mike Gesicki, another big game for Mike Gesicki in that Bengals offense. Now, the big games from Gesicki coincide with Higgins not playing. When Higgins is playing, Gesicki doesn't do anything. So is Gesicki someone we're chasing here? I mean, we talked earlier about Higgins. He's being called day-to-day. Sounds like he's got a chance to play this next game for the Bengals. We don't know if he can play 4 quarters, even if he's active. We're in that zone with him. But what are we doing with Mike Gesicki, who is an athletic guy, but his production's been all over the place?
Well, this is what we expected from Gesicki all along, right? Like I at the beginning of the season, before the season started, he was someone in best ball I was targeting a lot. He's arguably, or I think he is my highest owned tight end because of that, because he's going to have those, peak weeks, and we expect that because of what he brings to the table from a receiver perspective, how athletic he is, a red zone threat. But if you're looking for a floor at tight end, I just wouldn't suggest him. Like I think there are other floor plays. There are other players that are a little bit safer. And I think his role really depends on the health of the remainder of this roster, or of this offense. So I'm not going to overly invest. I'm not going to chase that production because I just don't think it's going to be there on a consistent basis. So if you're looking for a high variance guy with plenty of upside, he's your guy. But keep in mind the floor is very, very low. He is one of those players that can give you 0 to 1 fantasy points on any given week.
I'm on Marsal at fantasyguru.com. Before we look at some of the questions here, I want to ask you another question about the Giants. I talked about the situation earlier in their backfield. Tyrone Tracy, who 145 yards and a touchdown last night, he's in the concussion protocol. It's a Monday night football game, so we don't know if he's going to play. I can't ask you this week because, but what does this backfield look like when Tracy and Singleton are healthy? Singletary at the start of the year was the guy. He got hurt. Tracy became the guy out of necessity. Singletary comes back, and he's not on the field. He's not playing. He's not getting the football. Is this Tracy's backfield when both these guys are healthy? Is it a 50-50 split? What are your thoughts, Armando?
So we didn't talk about him, but he's still available and he's not going to be available in competitive leagues, okay? But he's still available in over 30% of ESPN and Yahoo leagues. So keep that in mind. If he's out there in your league, you go and spend all of your fab on Tracy, like all of it. In my opinion, if you're watching these Giants games, I am. He is by far the better running back on this backfield. Like he is clearly the best option that they had. They ran well against a very tough Steelers defense yesterday. He was the primary reason for that. He did really good, explosive, showing his burst, showing his speed. He's a dynamic running back that can catch passes in the backfield as well. This is a team that's going to be chasing points. So even if they're trailing, he's not going to get scripted out. I think Tracy is the backfield or the running back in this backfield. He is the primary running back in this backfield when he's healthy, right? When he's 100% healthy, he'll be the primary back. I think he's outplayed Singletary. I think, Singletary's kind of taking the back seat now, and he's the handcuff now to own here in New York. And I think Tracy's the primary back. So for me, he's someone that should be owned in every league at this moment.
Going to with the chat room, what some of the people are talking about here. Again, you can listen, watch, ask questions live, facebook.com/fantasyguruhq, youtube.com/@elitesports. Both those spots, you can ask those questions. We address them during the show. I talked earlier, and since we were just talking about the Giants, about Wan'Dale Robinson. I read an article every year, the PPR running back myth, and the idea that you can just grab running backs whose major value is catching passes, and they're all over the place. I mean, just look at what Austin Eckler's doing this year. They're all over the place. Sean says, I think kind of in jest, Wan'Dale Robinson, the PPR wide receiver myth. We talked about him earlier. Like Robinson's 9 points a week, right? Like he's your third wide receiver flex option if you're in a really deep league. but there's no ceiling with Wan'Dale Robinson, right? It's just he's like the most boring guy a week. He catches 5 passes every week and does nothing with it, Armando.
Yeah, so for me, it's all about your wide receiver build, right? Like it depends on what you're looking for. If you have already 2 ceiling guys and you're looking for kind of like a little steady floor, he makes a lot of sense. If you're looking for upside, he's not your guy. I have him in a lot of my leagues where, deeper leagugues like 14-team PPR league and 12-team PPR leagues that play very deep. I have him in a lot of these, especially these leagues where you're starting multiple flexes and you have 3 receivers, multiple flexes in a PPR. But if you're looking for ceiling, if you're looking for upside, no, I always view him as someone like a floor play. And we expected this kind of role from him this year, right? Like we talked about it before the season started. We expected but we also said the ceiling is not there. It's going to be Malik Nabers, the number 1 guy, and this is going to be their second guy that they kind of check down to, working out of the slot and using him all over the field. And we've kind of seen that come into fruition this year. And I think that's what he is. He's a 9 to 12 fantasy points per game in PPR formats guy. Very seldomly is he going to get you to 18 plus fantasy points, if at all, but very few times is he going to get you below 5 fantasy points. So that's kind of the receiver you're getting here. And I think he makes a lot of sense when you have a lot of high ceiling and volatile floor players on your roster. It kind of gives you that stable and steady production. So really depends on your roster context if you really want to start him and roster him and things like that.
David P's got a question continuing the wide receiver talk today. Guys on the waiver wire. Now, again, we said everyone pick up Cedric Tillman last week. I have said over and over and over again, pick up Jacoby Myers. So I know David's in a smaller league, so maybe that's why. So 2 of the names that are available here for him are Myers and Tillman. The third name is Calvin Ridley, who saw 15 targets last week. There's 3 guys here. Number 1, let's rank the 3 guys, and then I'll have a follow-up question for you, Armando. How would you rank Myers, Tillman, and Ridley?
So I think they're very close, right? I think they're in very similar tiers here. I would go with Tillman, Ridley, and Myers. I just rather be invested in Winston than any of the quarterbacks that these other 2 receivers have. But I think it's very close.
Ridley is an interesting guy because the whole offense with the Titans is interesting because it looks better with Mason Rudolph, who's not good, right? But, Mason Rudolph's thrown for 240 yards, which is a fever dream for Will Levis, who has been awful this season. You're still confident, really, because at some point Levis is back from the shoulder issue. I don't think they're benching Levis. I think Levis will get back under center. Does that appreciably change things for Ridley?
Yeah, it would, but he's still going to get the targets, right? Whether he catches 5 of his 15 targets, I think he's still going to see a consistent target, high volume week to week there, given their offense, right? They lost Hopkins there, so that's just more opportunities here for someone like Ridley. But this is why I prefer Tillman here, because Winston's going to throw you a bunch of interceptions, but he's going to connect with his receivers. He is going to connect with the receivers. He's going to throw 40, 35, 40 times pretty much. I don't want to say every week, but he's going to do that often here. So, I'm okay with Ridley, but I do think that he's probably going to give you a volatile floor week to week. And I think you have to understand it when it comes to him. And it's not because of him. It's more because of the quarterback situation.
Right. Armando, who does the shopping in your family? Does your wife do it or do you do it?
Me. Okay. I go to the grocery.
Okay. So
she does the list. Okay. She gives me the list.
Okay.
And as usual, I sometimes miss some things on the list. I have to go back. Hey, I get distracted. I'm looking at waiver wires as I'm doing the groceries, and things like that happen.
Well, maybe it's Greg M's got a question or got a comment here. On Wednesdays, we do, and I can't go for that segment on the Elite Sports Show, Jeff Mans and I. Kind of that. Maybe this is why, Armando, that you're having problems with filling the entire order when you go, because Greg says he can't go for people that are technically laying down on shopping carts. Use your hands to drive and not your forearms. You know those people. They put their forearms down and they're kind of strolling. Are you one of those people, Armando? Are you not paying attention and just grabbing things off the shelf like this, or are you pushing it with your hands?
I'm actually contrarian. I am contrarian. I pull the cart like this, like I literally pull it. Okay. I try to be contrarian. I always try to be contrarian, right? So that's my way of being contrarian. At the supermarket, I pull it like this, and I don't grab it by here. Everyone's here, and I'm here because I'm looking at everything, scanning everything. Boop. Then stop, go. But I'm very mindful of anyone behind me, because I know I don't have a little mirror there. But yeah, I am contrarian. I pull it from the front of the cart.
Okay. That's like the old school way they used to teach defensive backs to play, right? Because you were supposed to kind of keep your hand on the player and look back at the quarterback, right? You weren't actually, now they face guard them. So you're kind of like old school defensive backing things with the cart. Okay. Do you chuck things over your shoulder into the cart? Or do you?
No.
Okay.
Actually, I'm very organized. I put things by like how I'm going to put it in the bag or how I want them to bag it. Like I'm very, how I'm putting it away at home. So, yeah, cold stuff goes with cold stuff.
Okay, nice.
Good. Yeah,
so they pack it the same. Yeah, that's good. Smart.
Yeah.
I do the same thing at Costco, and they always mess it up when they put it back on the
Yes, I know. I hate when they do. Sometimes like, I'll help you back.
Yeah, let me organize. That's the way all the food was together at the start. The shirts go separate.
Yeah.
Okay. Chef Rand says the following: who is a tier 1 wide receiver I can trade for? Okay, now this again, who knows, right? But I find this interesting. I wanted to bring this up to you because Chef Rand says I need a wide receiver 1 that I can trade for. And then Chef Rand goes on to say, my wide receivers are Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin, and Drake London. Whether any of those are technically a wide receiver 1 or not, all 4 of those guys are top 20 wide receivers. So I don't see a need to trade for another top-end wide receiver. I don't like teammates. As good as Nacua and Kupp are, I don't like that on a daily basis. But what are your thoughts, I think, generally on this crew? Because, again, we don't know who you can trade for, what it's going to cost. Would you be aggressively pursuing another wide receiver if you had Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin, and Drake London?
Absolutely not. I unless I get an offer that I can't refuse in this situation, I'm not even actively looking for a trade here. I understand the thought process because maybe you can pair up one of these receivers with one of those running backs on your bench and then upgrade to a CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, like one of those top tier, like you're talking about the elite class of the receiving group that we have. But is it a necessity? No, I prefer maybe having this depth at the running back on my bench and having all of these receivers here to choose from. One injury can change things for your roster context and the dynamic of your roster. So I don't think that you have to make a trade here.
Tony T asked a question about Jerome Ford. What are your thoughts on Jerome Ford with a revitalized offense and Chubb's increased workload? I think the answer of whether Ford is on the waiver wire on your team is totally roster dependent. Like Armando has said multiple times to these guys. The leagues I have Ford, I'm not dropping him, but I'm in 14-team leagues with, I'm not going to the waiver wire and finding anything better. If you're in a 10-team league, I don't know if you have to have Ford rostered. What are your thoughts on Ford in this offense? Because Chubb is going to get his 15 to 20 touches a week. But they have to be considered moving forward the team that is going to limit him. He's not getting 30 touches a week. They keep Chubb in that 14 to 18 carry zone each week. He gets 1 or 2 catches each week. And then there's always another back that's involved in this offense. I anticipate that being Ford when he's healthy. What are your thoughts, Armando?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Ray. If I have him, I'm probably not cutting him especially in deeper leagues, right? Like in a 10-team league where you have a shallow bench, there's probably better options on waivers. So it's very league dependent, but I'm also not actively adding him. I think if you're a Chubb owner, I would definitely handcuff, and I agree with you. I think it would be Ford when he's healthy. But I don't think you have to roster him. Like I feel like we talked about Braelon Allen. I think Braelon Allen is much more valuable than someone like Ford here, given the situation. But again, it's really roster dependent and kind of who's out there and who's not.
And let's ask an easy question to end the conversation here, Armando. Let's pull up the Heroic Doses question. Please explain to me how Patrick Mahomes is QB22 and Mr. Baker with the Bucks is QB2. Armando, answer the question that is unanswerable.
I mean, listen, I have to toss my hands up. I unfortunately don't have the answer. I don't like to make up answers. I like to be. I don't know the answer to that. The only thing I could say is like you look at Mahomes and he doesn't have to do what he used to do. I think that's the difference. I think that they're winning with the run game. Their defense is playing well. And, Baker Mayfield, on the other hand, he's having to throw a lot. Like this is a Tampa Bay Bucks defense that, especially that secondary that hasn't, been able to stop anyone. So he's getting in a lot of shootouts. Does it make sense? Nope, it doesn't make sense to me. If I'm starting a team, I'm still taking Mahomes over Baker Mayfield 10 out of 10 times. But from a fantasy standpoint, it's been Baker. It's been Baker Mayfield.
What about Baker Mayfield moving forward? Because, again, he loses Chris Godwin. Mike Evans is out. He's going to miss multiple weeks. And he goes out and throws for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns anyway. Like, what do we make with him moving forward? Because he's gone for 325 and 3 in 3 straight games. Okay. He's also thrown 8 picks in those 3 games. So at least 2 interceptions in all 3 of those games. He's thrown the ball 45 and 50 times the last 2 weeks, to your point, because of their bad defense. Is Baker Mayfield just locked in as a QB1? Is that just what we're going to see in the second half? If you had Baker Mayfield as your QB1, are you set for the second half?
I think you are, right? I was watching that game closely this weekend, and I'll be honest, I was very impressed. Like, I was very impressed with the way he played, given that he lost Godwin and Mike Evans to play at that level. Yes, he made some mistakes. Yes, he overthrew one receiver. It was an interception, and then he missed McMillan, which would have been an easy catch for 6 touchdowns, like from the 50-yard line. He threw it behind him. So when you see that, like, it's going to happen, but he's still going to give you the production. There's going to be volatility, but he's going to give you the production. I'm comfortable with him as my QB1 simply because we know he's going to throw the ball a ton. So, if you have him, don't go out there looking for quarterbacks. You know what I'm saying? Just go out there and add wide receiver and running back depth.
Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com joins us every week on Tuesdays at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. The next couple of days, you'll see all of his reports talking about red zone usage and snap usage. And he'll be on the live stream tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern. He'll be writing his article, his review on Sundays, breaking the whole slate down, what happened. Find his Mind of Marsal podcast at fantasyguru.com. Click that Elite Plus tab where you find this show. You also find his show. What else the next couple of days, Armando?
Yep, like you mentioned, I'll be on tonight with Russell and Tyler Beaker. We'll be talking waiver wires and all that stuff there. Snap usage, red zone review, defense versus position charts, the DFS breakdown on Friday, Mind of Marsal podcast Thursday, Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern. Chris Rose and myself, the DFS live stream there. Make sure you check that out. And like you mentioned, every Sunday night, overnight, between Sunday and Monday, are usually around 2 in the morning Eastern time. You'll find the weekly recap posted on the site. It's just very in-depth, and you have Jeff Mantz's plays you didn't miss, or plays you may have missed during the weekend. So that's part of that article as well.
Thanks, Armando, for joining the stage. Do every Tuesday. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the week. Happy Halloween. What are the kids dressing up as, by the way?
So we have a Fortnite character. One of them is a Fortnite character, and then my son's just going to be it's like a whole black suit, and it has like lights, like light wire lights around. I have no idea what it's called. It's I guess a new thing there with the kids. I was going to do Ted Lasso, but the wife says she doesn't like me with only a mustache, so I can't. Happy wife, happy life. So I cannot just do the mustache, Ray. So I'm just gonna go out there as a dad.
I went as Ted Lasso last year. And then the next day on this show was Ned Flanders.
Nice. So yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Did the face paint and the whole thing. So yeah, you should have done it, but I understand you also have a significant other, and you
full
don't
disclosure, I did rock it for a week last week. Right before the show, I had it for another week, like about 4 days. So I was trying to get, maybe good luck for the little league baseball team. It didn't work out.
Sorry, Armando. But we appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and all that. Enjoy the holiday, whether or not you're Ted Lasso. I'm sure you'll have a good time with the kids and all that. And we'll talk to you in a week.
Yep, sounds good. Take care, everyone.
You got it. He's Armando Marsal, Ray Flowers. The show will be back tomorrow at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Justin Fensterman and the Bosco, Rich Mileto, will take you home. I'll return for Thursdays and Fridays show. I'll be on with Jeff Mans tomorrow from 3 to 6 on Elite Sports on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. For Armando, I'm Ray Flowers. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com.